The project type was it's a primary residence for someone named Tom West, who was both the client and the GC on this. The project has kind of a unique origin story. Tom, he's a race car driver. He was on a flight to Florida for a car race, and mid-flight sort of was overwhelmed with the urge to start sketching ideas for his future dream house. Landed in Florida and got off the plane, turned his phone back on, and the phone was blowing up with the news that his house back in Maine had burned down. So that was kind of the jumping off point for building the new house. Basically, the goals were to, rebuild this house in its footprint, a small structure, single bedroom, and set up to do a lot of entertaining. So a lot of social space. Part of the approach to that was to build this sort of inverted structure where the master bedroom, instead of being on the second floor, which is more common, was down in the sort of the daylight basement area, and the primary living spaces were up on the second and third floors. My favorite moment was, I think, coming out there after months of form work, and when they stripped the forms off this thing, it was sort of this Christmas morning moment where you don't know what you're going to get, and you hope for the best, and they strip the forms, and there it is. And hopefully you like it, because that's what it is. And it turned out beautifully. And strangely, there was one flaw on the back side of the house where the concrete didn't settle right, and that ended up being my favorite. Just a very interesting spot where there was sort of a hollow, and you could see more of the aggregate of the concrete. Tom's favorite feature, probably the stair as well, because he was very involved with the building of that and the design as well. So he worked with a stair maker named Nick Fournier, and they just came up with the whole modular system of that. I think Tom and Nick did a lot of the grunt work on that as well, the grinding and the finishing, and it came out so beautifully that I think Tom's very proud of that. There's a spiral stair in the center of the house. It's sort of the backbone of the house. If you think about a spiral stair, I always think of them as being very hard to use and dangerous, and yet this one, we were able to create this light-filled concrete tube for the stair, and then these really chunky timbers that, if you looked at each component, they were very heavy, but then when they were all assembled, it formed this really beautiful helical curve that was very graceful. And that kind of tethers the three stories of the house together. The biggest learning experience for me on this was working with concrete. It was the first step of the project, starting with something that's normally buried, but this is what we're going to see every day. And being very thoughtful about how that all goes together. You have to sort of think through everything in reverse, put it in the formwork. Where are the light fixtures going to be in the walls, and how are the form ties going to look? So thinking backwards and then putting the concrete in there, and like I said, hoping for the best. So that was a huge learning experience for me. Well, definitely want to thank Tom he was an amazing client, and he was also the GC, and he was incredible to work with. He was like the engine of this project, and so energetic and just a joy to work with. And it made my job so much easier and so much more fun, just to come up with cool ideas together and watch those get implemented. So to thank him, and then also thank Al Putnam, structural engineer, for humoring us on projects like this, where it was pretty crazy. And Al was able to help us just, move through all the concrete details and get everything worked out, and see that vision fulfilled. And then also George Morrison was the concrete contractor. And he was out there, I think, for 3 or 4 months forming this and making it happen. And he did a fantastic job. It's not what concrete contractors are normally asked to do. And I think he really came through on this.